The high north of planet Earth, a regime of extreme cold and vast plains of ice and snow. This frozen wasteland is one of the harshest environments in the entire world, and yet, here too, life finds a way. Just as the various Arctic animals of today, 73 million years ago, animals of a different kind called the frigid north their home. Those being the dinosaurs. At the peak of their reign, they had adapted to survive in these most extreme conditions and called this mystical icy realm their home. Out of all of these unique survivors, one traveler in particular would leave one giant step into the cold, hard ground. Coming from the family of horned dinosaurs that would produce animals like the legendary Triceratops, these animals would make their way from the moist and humid wetlands down south up into the northern regions of our globe and thrive like no other. Vast herds, this polar dinosaur would have roamed across these regions and come to inhabit the lands of the Maastrichtian Arctic Circle. This was Pachyrhinosaurus, the great Arctic traveler. The story of Pachyrhinosaurus would begin during 1945 and 1946, where two incomplete skulls were discovered from the sandy clay of the Horseshoe Canyon Formation in Alberta, Canada. After they were fully excavated, they would be brought to the National Museum of Canada, known today as the Canadian Museum of Nature. Upon arrival, the two skulls were closely studied and labeled as holotype NMC8867 and paratype NMC8866. Additional material was also discovered in the St. Mary River Formation, also located in Alberta. However, their importance to science wouldn't be fully recognized until the end of World War II once more excavations were conducted. 4 years later in 1950, these incomplete skulls would be classified as a new valid genus and species of dinosaur named Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis by Charles M. Sternberg. The generic name Pachyrhino is in reference to its large nasal boss, containing the Greek words pachy and rhino, meaning thick-nosed. Its specific name, canadensis, is named after the country the holotype and paratype were found in. Therefore, the full scientific name means thick-nosed lizard or reptile of Canada. Following its official description, even more material will be found in the years to come, starting in 1955, where a skull had been collected from the Scabby Butte locality. Other important material named in 1975, such as NMC21863, NMC21864, and NMC10669, were also found in this particular locality. 2 years later in 1957, a small crew led by Wayne Langston Jr. discovered various fossils for Pachyrhinosaurus. In fact, the University of Calgary intends to reopen the site that this material was discovered in by Langston and his crew as a field school for other university-level students of paleontology. Going into the late 1980s, a Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis bone bed was discovered by staff of the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology. Unfortunately, it has only been worked on annually for a few weeks during the summer ever since 2006. However, this will not be the only Pachyrhinosaurus bone bed discovered. Back in 1974, a massive bone bed was discovered by science teacher Al Lacusta along the Pipestone Creek in Grande Prairie, Canada. This bone bed was so large that it took over a decade to fully excavate and study the remains. Between 1986 and 1989, once again with the help of the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology staff, multiple paleontologists recorded a total count of 3,500 different Pachyrhinosaurus fossils along with 14 skulls, with 100 fossils being found every square mile. It has been speculated by other paleontologists that this bone bed is the source of a mass killing of Pachyrhinosaurus that failed across a river during a major flood. The size and anatomy of the skulls from the bone bed show an array of different age groups ranging from juveniles to adults, indicating that Pachyrhinosaurus cared for their young. If that's not all, while studying the skulls, scientists had pointed out notable differences between the skulls of larger specimens to the type species skull. and thus, 3 decades later in 2008, these specimens would be described as a new species. Paleontologists Philip J. Curry, Wayne Langston Jr., and Darren H. Tang named his new species as Pachyrhinosaurus lacustae, with the specific name lacustae being named in honor of the Great Bone Bed's discoverer. In 2010, various Pachyrhinosaurus remains were found along the Arctic Circle in the Kikak-Tegasak quarry of Alaska. This remarkable find makes these specimens the highest point on planet Earth where cetrosaurians are known to reside. These fossils would later be sent to the Museum of Nature and Science, known today as the Perot Museum of Nature and Science in Dallas upon excavation. The holotype, DMNH21220, contains many different fragments of a Pachyrhinosaurus skull, particularly parts of the frill. In the same year, 2 different paratypes were found for this supposed new species of polar dinosaur, one of which being paratype DMNH22558, which is a highly fragmented section of a skull that is missing its frill and lower jaw. Another paratype found would be DMNH21201, and this specimen would contain a parietal bar and lower anterior horn. 2 years after these discoveries in Alaska were made, in 2012, the findings would get an official species naming, described by Anthony Ricardo Fiorio and Ronald S. Dukowski as Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum. Its species name, Paratorum, was named in honor of Texas billionaire Ross Perot, to whom the Perot Museum of Science and Nature in Dallas is named after as well. Overall, Pachyrhinosaurus would have had a very wide range across the northern boundaries of North America, and hopefully in time, even more groundbreaking discoveries will be made for this magnificent dinosaur. Pachyrhinosaurus is among one of the most unique ceratopsians to have ever lived. Where most ceratopsians possessed prominent frill and nasal horns, all species of this dinosaur instead possess a very large bump just below the frill and on the brow known as bosses. And despite the fact that all species have this particular feature, they could differentiate between species and even, on occasion, individuals. For example, both of Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis and Paratorum's bosses nearly conjoined, whereas for lacustae, its bosses were completely separated. The structures of the nasal bones were also unique among individuals and species. Pachyrhinosaurus, lacustae, and Paratorum both had rough-shaped bosses with an extra jagged tip towards the end of the snout. This is in complete contrast to Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis, which had a smoother texture and lacked that jagged tip that its opposing species had. Ornamentation is another important feature to Pachyrhinosaurus individuals that differentiates between species. Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis and lacustae for the most part have highly similar curved horns from the top of their frill, with lacustae in particular having unique ornamentation directly in the middle of its frill, while Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum's horns instead curve downwards towards the top of the corners of the frill itself. As for size, Pachyrhinosaurus was a medium-sized ceratopsian for its time, and various estimates have been made over the years. For starters, canadensis was not only the first of the species discovered, but it was also the largest of the 3, having a length of 6 to 8 meters or 19.7 to 26.2 feet, and a weight of 3.3 to 4.4 tons. It may have potentially dwarfed its other 2 species of the genus in overall size. Gregory S. Paul speculated that Pachyrhinosaurus lacustae and Paratorum were the exact same size. These 2 species were postulated to have had the same length of 5 meters or 16.4 feet, and an overall weight of 2.2 tons. While this ceratopsian was nowhere as large as other members of its group like Torosaurus or Triceratops, Pachyrhinosaurus was still a relatively big dinosaur, and would have been a highly formidable animal if it were still alive today as it was in the late Cretaceous. Pachyrhinosaurus belongs to a subgroup of dinosaurs called Eucentrosauria, which resides in the Centrosaurine subfamily Ceratopsidae. Ceratopsidae is a large family of frilled ornithischians that make up the true and most advanced members of Ceratopsia. Ceratopsians have a fossil record that goes as far back as the Middle Jurassic, evolving under the shadows of the larger dinosaurs similar to the Tyrannosaur family tree. And indeed, in many formations, a ceratopsian lived in the same region as a tyrannosaur, indicating that their predator and prey relationship is far more ancient than people realize. Similar to their predators, ceratopsians started out small, with skulls that lacked frills and horns. The early Cretaceous member, Aquilops, was the first of its kind to evolve the now iconic nasal horn. Once the late Cretaceous began, ceratopsians grew larger and later developed brow horns and complete frills. which led to the rise of the ceratopsids in the middle of the late Cretaceous. Ceratopsidae is divided into two subfamilies, those being the chasmosaurines, which are known for having all three horns like the famous Triceratops, and centrosaurines, which lack either brow horns like Centrosaurus itself, or lack nasal horns like Nasutoceratops. Eucentrosauria in particular has two tribes, those being Centrosaurini and Pachyrhinosaurini, where Pachyrhinosaurus resides. Surprisingly, paleontologists have a rather good idea of how Pachyrhinosaurus as a genus evolved over the Campanian stage. While the phylogenetic placement for Styracosaurus is uncertain, it's widely considered as the most basal member of its lineage. As time went on, Styracosaurus evolved into Stellosaurus, which still retained the tall nasal horn like other centrosaurs, and would later evolve into Aeneosaurus, a taxon known for its uniquely curved nasal horn. The further evolution of Aeneosaurus is what created the Pachyrostron clade, where the curved nasal horn kept evolving and became a boss, which is what brought the rise of Pachyrhinosaurus and the more basal Ankylosaurus. While we do understand a great deal about the family of Pachyrhinosaurs and how they evolved over millions of years, the true diversity of Pachyrostra is unknown. Hopefully in the future, the fossil record could provide more insight into how diverse this clade truly was. Pachyrhinosaurus' range extended from southernmost Alberta to northernmost Alaska. The Wapiti, Summit Creek, Horseshoe Canyon, St. Mary River, and Prince Creek formations are the total formations currently known to be inhabited by this polar dinosaur. The age locality of these formations is dated between the Middle Campanian and early Maastrichtian, which shows that Pachyrhinosaurus as a genus lived on Earth for approximately 5 million years, with the first being Pachyrhinosaurus lacusti and the last being Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum. Since Pachyrhinosaurus had such a wide range, they would have lived in many different environments such as forests, floodplains, and swamps, along with frigid regions of the high north of our planet, which the latter is unique to P. paratorum. And such, P. paratorum and its contemporaries that lived far up north would have experienced the long winter phases where the days and nights remained dark for the next 120 days. But whenever it was not winter, the environment would become warm and humid, allowing plants to grow and providing food for the Alaskan species. Speaking of plants, various different types of flora surrounded all Pachyrhinosaurus species. While there isn't much flora found in the Wapiti Formation, fossilized spores do indicate that Pachyrhinosaurus lacusti was surrounded by and likely fed on early flowers and other flowering plants. Fossilized Marcilius and semi-aquatic ferns have also been found. Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis, known from the St. Mary River and Horseshoe Canyon formations, likely fed on plants like the ferns Microlebiopsis and Hydroteris, horsetails, and fallen leaves from trees like the cypress pine Drumhalera, ginkgo, and the cycad Nelsonia. Aquatic angiosperms like Cardstonia and Tolmania are among the many semi-aquatic plants found in its region. Lastly, Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum has, so far, the best fossil record of what kind of plants existed in its high latitude environment of Prince Creek. While most plant fossils consist of spores and pollen, their presence shows what kind of plants existed in the Prince Creek Formation. P. paratorum likely fed on ferns, horsetails, magnolia flowers, and fallen leaves from the genus of pines Xenoxylon and Parataxodium. Other aquatic plants, along with algae and mosses, are also known in the region. As for the behavior of Pachyrhinosaurus, it is suggested to be a social herding animal due to the bone beds that have been discovered with a massive amount of Pachyrhinosaur remains ranging from juveniles to adults. These animals likely would have coalesced into huge migratory herds that would have moved from one place to another, along with possibly having huge nesting sites. Additionally, the huge bosses that Pachyrhinosaurus had seem to indicate that they would have likely headbutted each other either for social hierarchy, mating, or hitting trees to access plants that they can't reach. Pachyrhinosaurus lacusti coexisted with various wildlife, and the Wapiti Formation shows that this species coexisted with the likes of hadrosaurs like Edmontosaurus, and small mammals like Cimolodon, Didophodon, and Eodelphus. Small theropods also inhabited this region, such as the Dromaeosaurus Baryonychus and Soranitholestes. The dubious yet rather famous Troodon is also known from this formation. Despite the unknown nature of troodontid diets, it's not impossible to believe that all three theropods served as danger for younger individuals. Adults, on the other hand, had to worry about tyrannosaurids. While there's only footprints and teeth known from this formation, the teeth have been referred to as the famous Albertosaurus, although it's still unclear what taxon these teethed tracks have come from. If it is indeed Albertosaurus, then it would have been the apex predator of this formation. Their social nature, bone-shattering jaws, and lightning-fast speed gave them an easy edge against adult Pachyrhinosaurs. However, not all predators would have been as fortunate, as Pachyrhinosaurus specimens with pathologies have been shown to have survived their encounters from these predators. One specimen of P. lacustae in particular showed it survived a severe bite to the face, showing a portion of the skull below the eye was broken off. The fact that it survived such an encounter shows how resilient dinosaurs were, much like their modern descendants. Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis also lived with various wildlife, more so than what's known in the Wapiti Formation. The two formations P. canadensis inhabited shows that they coexisted with an array of mammals such as the previously mentioned Didelphodon, Cimolodon, and other mammals like Cimolames and Meniscoesis. They also coexisted with ornithischians like the aforementioned hadrosaur Edmontosaurus, possibly the Lambeosaurine Hypacrosaurus, the Ankylosaurus Anodontosaurus in Edmontonia, the Thessalosaurid Parksosaurus, and possibly one of the many species of the Pachycephalosaur Sphaerotholus. They also coexisted with smaller theropods like the herbivorous ornithomimids like Ornithomimus itself, possibly Dromaeosaurus, and cygnathids like Apatoraptor and Epicyrostenotes. Other small carnivorous theropods and other reptiles include the ant-eating Alvarezsaur Albertonicus, the Troodontid Albertovenator and the aforementioned Troodon, the uniquely box-snouted Dromaeosaur Atrociraptor, and the semi-aquatic Choristidae reptile Champsosaurus. While most of these small theropods likely fed on younger individuals, adults likely had to worry about Albertosaurus, which unlike Wapiti, has actual specimens known from both formations. Aside from predators and other animals they coexisted with, Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis had likely dealt with a plethora of competition from the same food sources. This species lived with many other ceratopsians such as the Chasmosaurines Arinoceratops, Anchiceratops, and Regaliceratops, along with the Leptoceratopsid Montanaceratops. While the Chasmosaurines especially had large, colorful frills and horns to intimidate other ceratopsids, Pachyrhinosaurus was unique thanks to its boss. It's possible that no horn would have penetrated its thick and heavily armored head. Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum, the last and northernmost species of the genus, thrived in northern Alaska with many different kinds of mammals and dinosaurs especially. The mammals that coexisted consisted of the small Sikuamis, Unakamis, the aforementioned Cimolames, basalmost marsupials, and others of indeterminate nature. Other dinosaurs P. paratorum coexisted with was once again Edmontosaurus, this time only being referred to the species E. regalis, Lambeosaurine hadrosaurs of indeterminate nature, the Pachycephalosaurid Alaskacephali, indeterminate Leptoceratopsids, Thesalosaurids, and potential ornithomimids. Trace fossils found elsewhere but dated to the same time suggest the presence of birds and surprisingly Therizinosaurids. Smaller theropods that younger individuals were likely wary of were Dromaeosaurus referred to as Dromaeosaurus itself, and the aforementioned Saurornitholestes, a brand new genus of Saurornitholestine dromaeosaur that still needs a name, and an unnamed species of giant Troodon. Similar to their earlier relatives down south, adult individuals of this species had to worry about a different tyrannosaur in Alaska, that being Nanuqsaurus, the apex predator of the Prince Creek Formation. One thing all three Pachyrhinosaurus species have in common is that they were very social animals. The bone beds of Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis and lacustae have shown that members of all ages traveled in large herds. And it's also thanks to these bone beds that paleontologists have a great understanding of how these animals grew. When born, young individuals had little to no boss, but as time went on, they would gradually get larger. Paleontologists in the past have also gone as far to speculate the possibility of a keratinous horn or horns existing in life. However, there is no evidence to support this. Regardless, their large bosses and giant herds gave it a far greater edge over their predators. Overall, Pachyrhinosaurus was rather important to the ecosystems it inhabited. All three species added to the diversity of ceratopsids and other herbivorous dinosaurs in their respective regions. And thanks to the discovery of P. paratorum, we now know that it would have inhabited the high Arctic, unlike any known ceratopsian. Hopefully more discoveries will provide how truly diverse dinosaurs really and truly were in those far northernmost regions. Pachyrhinosaurus has made a frequent number of appearances since its discovery, with all three species being shown in many video games and various different media, with its first video game appearance being in 2001's Jurassic Park 3 Park Builder. Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis would debut in the Dinosaur Kane franchise in the 2005 arcade game with multiple different forms. 7 years later, 2008, it would make its debut in the Fossil Fighters franchise named as the Earth-type Vivosaur Pachrhino, later appearing in the sequel game Fossil Fighters Champions in 2010. In 2012, Pachyrhinosaurus will be featured in Jurassic Park Builder as a gold-tier dinosaur and fighter. Coming into 2016, Pachyrhinosaurus would then be released as a tournament creature in Jurassic World the game. Within the same year, Pachyrhinosaurus would be featured in Ark Survival Evolved as a tameable creature that could be found across the entire island with the exception of the mountainous regions. It was also meant to appear in Jurassic World Evolution in 2018 but ultimately ended up being scrapped. However, Pachyrhinosaurus will manage to be featured in its sequel game Jurassic World Evolution 2 as part of the Deluxe Edition DLC in 2021. The following year, Pachyrhinosaurus would be featured in Prehistoric Kingdom, which showcases all three species. Soon after, it would also be featured in Jurassic World Primal Ops before the game was taken off the market. Currently, Pachyrhinosaurus' latest video game appearance was in the 2023 remake to Ark Survival Evolved called Ark Survival Ascended. As for documentaries, TV shows, and movies, Pachyrhinosaurus has a much wider range of appearances, with its documentary debut being in 1992's PBS animated paleo-documentary miniseries, The Dinosaurs, in Episode 2, Flesh on Bones, where a herd of them are seen migrating along with a herd of Edmontosaurus. This depiction is the first one to showcase Pachyrhinosaurus with a horn. However, it's worth mentioning that this theory of Pachyrhinosaurus having a nose horn would end up being disproven in the early 2000s. Then, 6 years later, it would appear in 1998's Dinosaur, Message at Stone. In this short docu-film, it is also depicted having a nose horn. Its official theatrical entry would be in 2000 with Disney's Dinosaurs, one of the many species of dinosaurs found in the massive migrating herd. In the following year, Pachyrhinosaurus would be featured in the animated film The Land Before Time 8, The Big Freeze, as the character Mr. Thicknose. Once a fraudulent teacher and prominent figure of the Great Valley, he leads the main group of heroes to freedom at the end of the movie and will continue to be featured in the television show in 2007. 3 years later, in 2004, Pachyrhinosaurus would get a cameo in the Discovery Channel documentary miniseries Dinosaur Planet in the episode Little Das's Hunt. Its cameo consists of paleontologist Scott D. Sampson showcasing different kinds of ornamentation in ceratopsians as a whole. In 2008, Pachyrhinosaurus would be featured in the History Channel documentary miniseries Jurassic Fight Club in the episode River of Death. In this episode, a herd of Pachyrhinosaurus lacustae are being hunted by a pair of Albertosaurus. They unfortunately ended up falling into a flooded river and drowned. Along with this, they would also incorrectly depict Pachyrhinosaurus with a nose horn. However, it's worth mentioning that the skull used for the model resembles a possible ancestor of Pachyrhinosaurus, Ankylosaurus horneri. Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis would later be shown in the second season of the animated TV series Dinosaur King as of 2007. As for the Alaskan species, Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum, it would get its debut in the NOFA documentary Arctic Dinosaurs once again within the same year. Later on in 2011, Paratorum is featured in the Canadian documentary March of the Dinosaurs, where it's shown being a migratory species along with an Alaskan species of Edmontosaurus, as they head to warm weather further south. Going into 2013, Pachyrhinosaurus would be the main animal featured in the documentary film Walking with Dinosaurs 3D, which focuses on a young male named Patchy as he defends his herd from hungry dinosaurs described as Gorgosaurus and dangerous obstacles that come their way. The following year, the film would have a re-edited version called Walking with Dinosaurs Prehistoric Planet 3D, narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch. It is also worth noting that although the Pachyrhinosaurus species shown is Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum, they more closely resemble the prior named species, Pachyrhinosaurus lacustae, given the ornamentation of the skull depicted in the movie. Surprisingly, Pachyrhinosaurus was supposed to make a debut in the Jurassic World trilogy with Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. However, it would unfortunately end up being scrapped in favor of its Asian cousin, Sinoceratops. In 2019, it would be featured in the first episode of the documentary miniseries Amazing Dino World, titled The Feathered Revolution. This would be the latest incorrect depiction of Pachyrhinosaurus having a nose horn. Later on in 2021, it would be featured in the YouTube animated series Dinosauria. Pachyrhinosaurus' latest documentary appearance would be in the groundbreaking British-American documentary series Prehistoric Planet in the episode titled Ice Worlds, where a herd of Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum are caught in a severe blizzard while being hunted by a pack of Nanuqsaurus. As for its latest TV show appearance, Pachyrhinosaurus would finally obtain its official debut in the Jurassic Park franchise in the animated series Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Overall, Pachyrhinosaurus has been featured quite prominently within pop culture media as a whole, and it will continue to be shown in various media as the years go on. Pachyrhinosaurus was one of this world's most interesting animals. A reptile that lived in a frozen tundra, it survived in a realm that many had previously believed impossible for its kind. However, not even this most amazing of creatures was immune to extinction. The cause of Pachyrhinosaurus' extinction remains unknown to this day. Despite living in the Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous, there is no fossil evidence to suggest that Pachyrhinosaurus went extinct with the other dinosaurs during the KPG mass extinction. Instead, rather mysteriously, it appears to vanish from the fossil record 69 million years ago. Pelacustai went extinct around 72 million years ago, and Canadensis was gone by 71 million years, leaving Paratorum as the last surviving member until it too vanishes from the fossil record 69 million years ago. Interestingly, Nanuqsaurus, the natural predator of P. paratorum, also went extinct around the same time, so there may be a connection between the two. However, as it stands right now, there's currently no known explanation for the disappearance of this most intrepid ceratopsian. While this thick-nosed reptile is no longer alive today, thanks to its fossil remains and the paleontologists who discovered them, we are now able to know and understand these incredible animals like never before. With their giant bosses and frills of solid bone, Pachyrhinosaurus is one of the most interesting ceratopsians that this world has ever seen. And who knows what incredible discoveries we are yet to find waiting in the ice and rock of the high north. Perhaps we will soon find ones that are just as unique as Pachyrhinosaurus. The Great Arctic Traveler. Thank you all for watching our first extinction file for 2025 dedicated to the one and only Pachyrhinosaurus. We hope you all enjoyed this video as much as we did in the process of creating it. Pachyrhinosaurus is among one of the most unique ceratopsians to have ever lived, and it deserves as much love as it can get. This video was directed and narrated by myself, CrimsonAcro, scripted by myself, SpinoDragon145, The Primal Earth, MikeMC9797, and LegitEliminator, edited by myself, MikeMC9797, SpinoDragon145, The Primal Earth, Straight Up Murph, RangoGamer, and LegitEliminator. The graphic designers for this video are Straight Up Murph for creature design, TheDinosaurHunter for the Pachyrhinosaurus paratorum model and thumbnail, Mephilas Seijin101 for the Pachyrhinosaurus canadensis model and animations, and SpinoDragon145 for the Pachyrhinosaurus lacustai model. And finally, the researchers for this video were SpinoDragon145, MikeMC9797, myself, and LegitEliminator. As always, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell for whenever we upload a new video. And with that, see you guys next time on Epoch Now.